morning, good morning. On this glorious spring morning, I'm just doing letting Jenni into the room so that we can all be panelists, doing my housekeeping. And yay, here we go. Welcome to everybody. Beautiful to see you here. And thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, wherever you are in the world. I'm Kylie Mowbray-Allen from Hello Media, and I'm talking with Jenni Walke from Elephant in the Room Consulting. And here in Bangalow, in the wee village of Bangalow in the northern New South Wales, it is a glorious sunny day. Hi, Jenni, how are you going?
I'm good. How are you today?
Good.
Nice.
Great to
Can
see
you hear me okay today?
Yes. How's Brisbane today?
Brisbane is great. It's not as miserable as they thought it was going to be, but I believe that we've got a storm coming. So we'll see how we go.
Yes, so do we. So do we. A couple of hours down the road from you.
Yeah, pretty much.
Has it been a great week?
It has. It's been a really, really busy week, but it's been a really, really cool week. Lots of fun things happening, lots of new projects starting. And also some realizations that I need to start growing my business in a new way, which is kind of exciting for, a business in my position to go, oh, we need some more resources and we need to start restructuring how we deliver things. So that's a pretty cool conversation to have.
It's really exciting. I love change and evolving and all of those things. That's super fun.
Yeah, definitely super fun. And I'm very, very excited about what's coming. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to seeing that happen, Jenni.
Yeah, and what about you? How are you guys going? How's your week been?
Also a very big week. I taught a masterclass to our clients on Wednesday, all about driving traffic to your website and how to do your own SEO, et cetera, which was super fun. I really enjoy those masterclasses. We do them every few weeks and we just deep dive into it and get the work done. And yeah, it's loads of fun.
Amazing. That's so cool. That is very, very cool.
So
my computer keeps moving, so I'm just trying to find you because my computer keeps shifting. So apologies before we try and find things. I'm in a what they call a quiet room today, and I'm just hoping that the booking has worked. So I'm sitting in a space in the city, which is kind of exciting.
Cool. That's a nice change, isn't it?
It is a nice change. Sometimes you just need a change, don't you?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do indeed. So today's topic, we're talking about writing your About Us page for your website and sharing your story. And then, of course, all the places that you can write versions of that story to put in other places. So, for posts on your social media, for your bio on Instagram, your bio on Facebook, etc. So it's a topic that you and I love talking about. Anything to do with content, we really enjoy.
100%. And I think that people sort of underestimate the About story. I'm actually helping a couple of people with their content at the moment. And this has been one of the biggest challenges because they're giving me kind of essentially War and Peace in a story. And I'm like, this is great. And I've now got your biography and I'm now going to, print that out and put it in a book and it's awesome. But so what? I think that's the question that we often forget is so what about your bio? What is the part of the story that we actually need to care about? And what do we want to share?
Oh, I just love that you've said so what, because you're so right. You're absolutely so right. So often when I'm talking with people and helping them write theirs, it's like, so aside from the bit where you're going to talk a little bit about you personally, the reality is, what is it that makes you different? Can anyone else say that of what you're saying about what you do? So what is your unique point of difference? And could it be in the how or the who or the way that you do it? So trying to flesh that out and get to the bottom of that so that you're different, you're unique in your offering. Exactly.
And we often forget that it's that piece of what's the point of the story. So I always, when I'm working people to try and get them to, to develop their story and share who they are. The question is, that why do I need to know that? Why is it important, not just to you, because people like to share who they are. And of course, we always like to talk about ourselves. But it's not about us. It's about what information is going to help our client or our customer or our prospect or someone just looking for some support, know a little bit more and know how we're going to support them. And I think that's the piece we tend to forget.
Absolutely. So what to leave out is more important even than what
So important. And we just forget that, right?
Absolutely. And a lot of people want to talk about their, their education or their schooling, etc. But often it's the experience that is so much important than the other. But I've just received a message from one of my fabulous team saying, "Oh, remember to go live on the custom streaming." And so I'm doing that right now. So perhaps we could just do another little introduction, Jenni.
We always forget that bit, don't we?
I'll leave it over to you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jenni Walke from Elephant in the Room Consulting. I'm so excited to be here on Friday for bite-sized conversations with my digital BFF, Kylie Mowbray-Allen from Hello Media, coming from Bangalore, and I'm coming from Brisbane, Yagara country in Queensland.
Beautiful. Great to be here. And thanks everyone for listening and for watching and for tuning in and being part of our Friday morning fun.
Pretty much, yeah. And it's like, this is our favorite day. I mean, I know for you, we talk about this a lot, and we have lots of big days, and we often chat before or after, every week for a CEO chat or just to touch base. But being able to have these conversations and share a little bit of bite-sized insight to people is just truly one of my favorite days of the week. And particularly today, because we're talking about things that, the about story and about us and how we share our history and our journey with customers, either on our capability statements, if you're in kind of corporate world, on your website, even down to like how you do your bio on Facebook or on LinkedIn. And that's where we forget that, there needs to be consistency across all the platforms. So you might have the best about us page on your website, but if that's not showing up on LinkedIn, on Facebook, well, that's a lot of wasted time and a lot of, missed opportunity not to be able to share that story across all your platforms.
Absolutely. And my masterclass that I taught this week was all about how to drive traffic to that website. So if you're not even putting it on LinkedIn, for example, or Facebook, for example, and then encouraging people to, or, giving people a way or a reason to get over to your website and learn more about what you do and why you do it and how you do it, etc.
Well, that's so important. And we saw that a couple of weeks ago when the world melted down because Facebook went offline for however many hours. And it goes back to your point that we've talked about, and you kind of share with everyone consistently that you need to be on a platform where you own your information, and the only one that is your website. And you need to be able to access the content and connect with people and be able to, share information in a way that's about you and that's yours to manage and moderate. And you can't, in social media, we don't own. And so getting people off our socials onto our website is such a critical element. But then that's that question, isn't it? Well, what do they do when they get there? Like when they get to the website, what are they seeing? What do they learn about you? And why does it matter?
Absolutely. So with the about page, Jenni, obviously we need to also think about the know, like, and trust factor. And very much the about bit is getting to know us and, a little bit of liking and clearly learning a bit about our experiences, etc., or what drives us to do what we do is helping them get to that trust stage. So Jenni, I'd like to talk first about not the experience, but the education and the qualifications. What kind of obviously we're talking really generically here because clearly, if you're a lawyer, it is really important, or an accountant, it is really important to have those qualifications on there because we don't want some backyard butcher doing those really important things for us. But when you are selling products, or if you are coaching or consulting, etc., is the relevance the qualification that you got 20 years ago, or is it also the relevance of the experience? Is it both, or is it just one? So what's your thoughts around sharing what high school you went to and what papers you completed at university, etc.?
I actually think it depends on two things. And, there's a lot of things on web pages and social, the it depends kind of caveat comes on everything. But from my perspective, I've just been actually redoing my capability statement, which I need to send through to a potential client. And so on that particular link, it's a document that's talking about my capability to be able to deliver a particular service. I have all my qualifications listed on that because that's a standalone document where they're actually looking at it and reading through to get a sense of whether I can have the capability and skill to deliver a specific program. So if you've got essentially one program and it requires a significant amount of technical skill and experience, but more technical skill, which is what qualifications give you, then it is important to show up and have that. So if you're ISO accredited, if you have a particular project management, if you've got particular qualifications that support your ability and capability to deliver your program or your service, then it's probably important to put that on, as you've just said. But for me, if I go through, and I'm just thinking about what's on my About Us page, my About Us page starts with my story of my company. It's 3 paragraphs that talk about how Elephant in the Room started. And then it talks about me and my journey, about why I started it. And the reason I share that is so people can resonate with, oh, okay, I'm on a similar path, I've been there, and I can relate to them. And I'm pretty sure on my About Us page, I do not include any of my qualifications. Because ultimately, when I'm delivering coaching and mentoring, or when I'm doing strategic planning, what degree I did and whether I have a grad dip or a master's or whatever the heck I have, and I don't have a master's, so I'm not suggesting that I do, but if I have a grad dip, or I think I've got half a dozen other certificates, they don't actually care. What they care about is, can I actually connect with them? Can I help their team and their business reach their goals? And how have I done that? And so I think it really depends. But from my perspective, for coaching, mentoring, and for most service providers, no one actually cares what your qualifications are.
Yes, I agree. And I think so often people misunderstand an About Us page for their CV. And
Yes. Oh, I know. There's nothing worse than going to an About Us page and seeing someone's resume. I'm like, I don't care what you did when you first left university. Like, we've talked about this before. The fact that I'm ex-military comes up occasionally. It's coming up at the moment because people are asking me this conversation, right? But I think I talk about it in the context that I've had an eclectic experience that started in the military. That's all that people need to know. If they want to learn about what I do specifically, then that's a one-on-one conversation that goes off and outside my About Us page. You know, how many years, what I did, what the projects were, it doesn't matter. If I'm doing a CV though, or a resume or a capability statement where those skills become really important, then I flesh that out. So it's that fit for purpose. What do we need to know, and where is the best place to show up and have that information? And your About Us page is not to put your life story.
Absolutely. And I think also, what is the purpose of the page? You want people to take action. You want them to book that discovery call or buy that product that's going to change their life or help them in some way.
So what's your idea about that though, with your About Us page, in terms of, because I'm just thinking now, I'm not even sure if I have a call to action on my page. I better fix that this afternoon. But for your About Us page, what's the purpose for you about an About Us page, and what value is it giving your clients?
I really want to explain how I can help them and how I can. But for me, it's very important having that experience, because in digital marketing these days, so many people are putting their hand up and saying, I love Facebook, or I love Instagram, therefore I'm going to be a social media manager, or I'm going to be a social media coach. And then off they go, teaching other people how to do it or doing it for them. But they have no background in the how, the why, the what it's all about. There's so many people these days calling themselves experts. And it's really big and it's really messy out there. So for me, it's actually really important. And, many people will disagree with why I choose to put this on mine, but it's really important to me that I share a bit of my background, which is that I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs, but particularly my father was a film producer. And so I worked in that industry, part-time with him a long time. And then off I went, after uni, and did my own, I got this amazing job in the UK and traveled around the world filming, for a TV show, etc., and writing for a lot of magazines at that time. So that to me is a really integral part of what I offer now, because now we're in the digital space, which we weren't before, but I've got that background and that marketing and that advertising. Then I came to Sydney and worked for the Sydney Morning, I was going to say Sydney Morning Herald, the Australian Women's Weekly. And so moved into magazines, and then I worked into advertising and marketing. And so all of those things, a bit of radio, etc. So I've been in the media space and the marketing space for decades. So I feel that showing that longevity and showing that experience is really, really important. And plus also I've had my own e-commerce store as well. So when I'm wanting to attract those type of customers and clients to me, them knowing that I've got that experience is super important, that I wasn't just having fun on Facebook, then put my hand up and said, hey, come and work with me, that'll be really fun. So that's important, but it's not necessarily important if you're selling products. So for example, on my e-commerce web store, when I had that business, I didn't talk about the fact that I grew up in a family of, filming and traveling with film, et cetera, because it was completely irrelevant. So I talked more about, because it was baby and children's products, I talked more about my experience of what my needs were when I found that I couldn't find the product that I needed. And so then I designed it and came up with it, and off we went from there. So that was more relevant with that business. My experience in my past is relevant for this other business. So I think tailoring it to suit, and really, again, not just going, okay, this is my experience as a whole, I'm putting it all out there and I'm sharing it all, because you all need to know every single thing, which is definitely not the case.
And the questions I always ask is that so what? So the exercise that we do and what we created is do the big timeline, do the chunks of work of timeline before you actually decide what you're going to put on your page. Go through that motion. And then at each point, ask yourself, well, do my clients or prospects need to know this bit of information? If they know this information, what's going to change? What's going to help them make a decision? If you can't answer that question, the answer is nothing, then you don't have to put that in. And then you do that with each of the chunks. So it's not about saying don't discounting your entire life work and and not valuing it, but remembering that you're sharing a story that's for other people. It's not about you saying, how amazing am I because I've done all these things. It's actually about saying you can trust me because I've done this thing. And this thing is going to help you understand that I can now deliver this service or product for you. And then you know what? I went and did this other little piece, and then that just added value to the other bit. So knowing that is also going to help you because now you're building more trust. So when we go through those chunks of time, asking ourselves, what's the value that it's going to bring to your audience is the most important question. And we forget to ask that. We just want to do, even people who tell, I see people go, there's too much about me, I'm just going to cut it out. That's potentially discounting huge value in your story. It's actually about not making it short. It's about making it purposeful. So it can be long, but it needs to be, every element needs to be purposeful and have a reason that you're sharing it. That's my view.
I agree. And when it's long, and I'm the queen of the long, when it's long, you need photos, you need pictures, because we're visual creatures and we need to see things as well as we go along. So, for example, on my About Us page, I've got a photo of my family because that's my why of one of my whys of what I do. So I also, as you know, Jenni, 14 years ago, my husband had an accident, became a quadriplegic. So I actually mentioned that in there because it's also really important for me to show people that when you've got your digital marketing in check and you've actually simplified your systems and you know what you're doing because you've got your strategy and all of that, then you actually can juggle a very big life. For me as a carer, for example, as a mother, Rich and I also run a not-for-profit. So by saying that and linking to a page about that, that's showing that yes, actually the juggle is possible and it's completely feasible that we can do it all. We just need to have strategies in place so that it's manageable.
And that's so important, isn't it? We do forget that we kind of, again, it goes back to the purpose of saying that you can do this. It's a little bit of actually also optimism for people to say, you know what, you might be struggling, you think this is all a bit too hard, but actually my job is to show you that it may not be easy and it may be a little challenging, but I can show you the path through it. I can actually help you through that process, and I can do that because I've experienced it, because I'm doing it. And so when you come to me and saying, how do I juggle 17 things at once? You can say, well, actually, this is how I do it. It's not that those people who come and go, well, I actually have no pressure in my life, no stresses in my life, but I would imagine that if I felt like that I might do these things. People go, what? That doesn't help me. You don't know what I'm experiencing right now. So sharing those things, particularly with what you've been doing and the experiences you've had, shows people and allows people to see that you actually will be able to understand what their challenges are, not just from a theoretical perspective, but an actual lived experience. And that actually helps people not only build trust, but also want to lean in and say, well, actually, I might try one of those. I might actually take that advice rather than just listen to the advice. I'll actually do the work because I can see what success will look like.
Absolutely. And Jenni, there's also another little aspect to that too, that if you are somebody that is a wife of a quadriplegic or somebody living with that injury, which, he's paralyzed from the neck down, it's a pretty big thing to be living with. And also for his family, it's a big thing to be living with. So if you're Googling and those keywords obviously come up and you find that about page and you're like, wow, so you can actually do more than just be a carer and be at home doing all of this. There are ways of doing it. And then they might join me on a live. They might follow what I'm doing and not necessarily even wanting to work with me, but maybe just be a little bit inspired or get some ideas of how they too could do that. And so I'm also in Facebook groups for wives of spinal cord injury and, things like that. And so being able to share my experience of running a business, being a mom, all that kind of stuff, and the importance of having my own identity, because some people want to be a carer full time in that situation. And that's great. For me, that's not my gig. I'm much better off doing what I do best. And And so of course there are paid carers doing what they do best.
Yeah, of
So,
course.
and what about for you in terms of sharing? For example, would you share, Jenni, or do you share on your About Us page that you're a Bundjalung woman? Do you talk about your Indigenous roots, for example?
Such a really interesting question, particularly as we've been talking, it's Indigenous Business Month. For me, I'm pretty sure I say that I'm a Bundjalung woman on my website. It's kind of who I am. It's what I do. But because of all of a sudden I've had a lot of new businesses and a lot of opportunities to actually share the kind of balance of kind of growing up in essentially a predominantly white environment kind of space, and then navigating my experiences on both sides, and particularly now in business helping organizations navigate that process. I haven't shared it a lot on my site because for me, it's just been something of who I am. It hasn't been a point of, although I know it is a point of difference and people have told me for many, many years that I need to identify that. I haven't really focused on it, but it was actually asked of me yesterday. We had this conversation at an event yesterday with Queensland leaders, and we were talking about this conversation about should we highlight, or should I highlight and demonstrate that there's a difference? And I actually think, again, now, and it's actually prompted me, and this weekend I'm going to go back and I'll add in a section about it, because for me, it's come so natural to me, like I don't even think about it, and many of my clients don't even think about the fact that I'm Indigenous. But for those who are, for an Indigenous business who is struggling or wanting to start or not sure where they can look to or looking for, essentially a role model, that's my mission, is to be a role model for Indigenous women, but all Indigenous people, to be able to actually, lean in and think and do things that they never thought they could do. I never thought I'd run a business. I never thought this was my path. I was like a corporate girl through and through. I was going to be the corporate person for the rest of my life. And then something happened and I realized I couldn't do that anymore. And that was no longer my path and no longer my mission. And so now my purpose is actually to help people, realize that passion. And it occurred to me last night when I was sharing that story, I was like, no one else knows that except me. So it's probably good that I start to share that. So not at the moment, but it will be in the next couple of weeks, most definitely.
Hey, get it up there. I'd like to say in my About Us page that I'm a New Zealander living in Australia. I think to some that'll be completely irrelevant. To me, it's super relevant. It's the 21 years I lived there for. It's the core of who I am. Yeah. So I think those little snippy bits, I think are, or snippets or something, I think are relevant, but not necessarily to everybody. So that's the important thing, I think, is fleshing or writing it, being really, or maybe not even writing it, maybe using Otter and just speaking your whole story out there, then jumping onto the desktop and editing that and pulling out the bits that aren't relevant, pulling out the bits that aren't going to resonate with people, pulling out the bits that are CV-like or whatever, and then leaving in the bits. But my top tip really would be then sending it to somebody else to read. So when I wrote my first About Us page for Hello Media, I sent it to a writer friend that was a published author of nonfiction and fiction. Wow. I sent from a writing perspective. I sent it to my mum. I sent it to some random friend, and I said, I want you to be brutal, share it. And interestingly enough, nobody came back and said, pull more out. It was maybe like just add that in rather than don't pull that, that really pleased me, because I thought, crikey, it's so long. And I'm always saying to people, reduce, but it wasn't that, because it was a well-rounded story. But for me, to be honest, the small ones, the small abouts, which is literally, I started this business in 2014 and we sell X, Y, and Z. That's it. That's not an About Us story. That's not a story.
It's a byline.
Yeah, so the sharing of a story is really important. And I think I've mentioned before about this client that I had years ago they sold shoes of all different kinds, like adventure kind of footwear. And so they didn't make anything themselves. They just collated this awesome amount of adventure shoes and sold them. And I was helping them with their content writing through their whole website. The About Us page was the bane of my life, because A, they wouldn't have photos of themselves on there, and B, they wouldn't mention anything about themselves. The most personal that we got was that they had 30-something years experience combined when they put it all together with the three people that own this business. And I thought, well, that's nice, but why would we buy from you? Because it wasn't cheaper than anywhere else. There wasn't anything different. And, footwear, obviously buying that online is, fraught with some challenges because you can't literally try them on. So you've got the whole thing of getting them back or whatever. So why do I choose you over any other shoe selling website, or even going to the shop down the road? Why choose you? So the way we eventually got around, and it was kind of fun, was they stood up in a little triangle and took a photo of them wearing their favorite shoes that they also sell down. So just taking a photo looking down, and it was really cool. And all they were happy with in the end saying is that they were a partner, and it was also one of their fathers that was involved. And so I fleshed that out a tiny little bit, but it was really an interesting and quite a challenging project because of this absolute resistance to share. So I think that we've always got to come back to that question: is why choose you? What makes you different than anybody else? So 100%. When I said before about what makes you different, is that in the how, is that in the who, or is it in the way that you do something? And can anyone else say that? And in that shoe situation, yes, 100 other places could say, yes, we sell shoes because we've got 30 years experience. But what makes them different about what they do?
And I'm just thinking about the photos. I think actually my About Us page has probably got more photos than any other space that you can find. If you want to find photos of me, actually my About Us page is the one that actually has the photos for that exact reason. Because I'm not a huge photo fan, and if you go across my website, my photo is not anywhere else except on my About Us page. But that almost for me is a choice, because for me, it's my story. Like I think my first photo on the page, and even the banner photo, is actually photos from Talon, where I traveled a couple of years ago, the year after I started my company. The first one is the photo of the cafe where I actually had the inception idea of my business. And so to me, there's a story behind the photo. So I think part of that conversation, isn't it, is also choosing the images that you use. So it's not just any photo. It's actually saying, well, this photo is relevant because it actually connects to the purpose and the story, and there's actually a connection. And when we do our content work, we're always making sure that the image that we're choosing connects with the content. You can't have two completely disparate images. It's fine to have, sometimes it's great to have like a traffic stop style photo, but there needs to be some connection with the content, at least some way, or some loose, bow that brings them together. And so for me, my About Us page is about sharing those stories. So it's photos of me in Barcelona, in the year that I found the business. It's the photos of where I did it. And then towards the end, it's the more professional photos of me as stepping into the role as the coach and the speaker and the author and all those things. But it's that transition. And so I was really deliberate about that. It wasn't just, oh God, don't make me put photos. Because my team and I have lots of conversations about my lack of photos on social media, which will change eventually. But, that's that conversation. But that's the one place that you can show up and be a little bit, show your personality. And I think that's the piece that I like about the conversation you have, is that we forget to show our personality. We're not robots, we're all humans, and part of the fact that people want to work with us is because we're different and quirky. And we are a little bit, you don't want to have a cookie cutter approach. You want to look differently. And I went to an event recently and it made me laugh. I had a little quiet chuckle to myself because I looked out at a sea of coaches and all of them were wearing blue or grey suits. Not like a really cool fun light grey, dark grey, blue, button down, leather shoes. And here's me turning up in leggings, like the black leggings.
You in your leggings and your sneakers.
And I had a conversation about the fact that this is why I relax, because I can wear heels. I used to live in beautiful, amazing high heels. And one of my favorite photos I took from my photo shoot is we were taking photos of me in my amazing, gorgeous heels that I love. And then there's a photo of me sitting on my staircase with my shoes beside me on the stairs as I sit on the stairs without my shoes on. And I looked at that and I'm like, that is me. Yeah. I'm the person who's going to take my shoes off, and the next one will be with all my amazing sneakers now. But that's my evolution and that's my conversation. But it helps people go, oh, that's cool. I actually don't have to feel like I have to be perfect around you. I don't have to be, and that's what you want. You don't want those coaches, and you don't want a mentor who's going to make you feel, less than. It's how do we actually connect and relate? And that's what our About Us story does. It connects and relates us with the people we want to work with.
Absolutely. And I think also you're famous for your earrings.
Oh, so Zoom has done that with me. I bought some amazing new ones from yesterday from a company called Blackbird, another Indigenous company who's got these beautiful ones. They're a little bit more studs, because someone said to me, Jenni, your earrings are too mesmerizing on Zoom. All I see is look at these earrings. So I'm going with some studs to try and shake it up a little.
I love that though. We all need something good to look at, don't we?
Yes, earrings. So your earrings.
I'm not saying you're not good to look at. You're clearly fabulous. But, adding a little bit of personality in there is also awesome. So
yeah, and that's the thing, when I look at your photos, you are all the photos I see are you with, with your hair out, laughing and just looking so relaxed. And I know we've talked about that photo shoot, the conversation we had around you doing the photo shoot. And that and that in itself is a beautiful story to share. When you're talking about conversations and you're talking about us, and again, it's not on the About Us page. But I talk about the fact that when I did my photo shoot, my dog was kind of floating around and wouldn't get out of the shot, and I was stinking hot, and the photographer smashed the light in my house, and all these kind of crazy things that happen during the kind of photo shoot. You're like, okay, who needs to know that? That's probably going to be that's a keynote speech about everything going on but still having great outcomes, right? Something like that. But we need to be mindful of where we're sharing information, what value it's giving. So what is you talked about sharing with others, but what would be another tip about developing your About Us story, and what are the two things you think is really important to include?
Well, I definitely think your experience. So what makes you good so let's take away what makes you different, what makes you good about what you do. So, and I think it's actually okay if you don't have the experience to be honest about that and be upfront and say, I've had a lifelong interest in this, or I've had a passion about this for a long time. So I've been deep diving into getting as much information and learning and studying and all of that. And now here I am ready to share my fresh new knowledge to the world. There's ways of wording it when you're new to something that you don't have to pretend that you've actually got experience. Yeah. But because having new knowledge is a really powerful thing as well. If you, for example, in our situation, Jenni, if we're not always getting new knowledge and learning and upskilling, etc., then we're going to be left behind. So sharing about that new knowledge is important. If you don't have that experience, put forward what you have been doing and what got you to that point. But also we need to know why you do it. So having a lifelong passion for cooking. And so now I've just started up my own biscuit company, and I'm selling pre-mixes for you to buy and cook at home, for example, because I believe that cooking with your family is so important, or whatever it is. So sharing passions, I think, is a super important part. So working out in what way can you share experience particularly if you don't have a lot of experience behind you. So how can you share it and show your love for something, or your passion of it, or your understanding of it? For example, like, how does a new naturopath get clients? They don't put a sign up and say, I'm brand new, usually. But if you actually said, wow, I've just come out of this massive amount of years of study and I'm so ready to bring this new knowledge and share it with my community, things like that. But then, of course, getting online, getting visible, showing that you know what you're talking about is super, super important.
Definitely. And Charles has just said, yes, and making promises and honor them if experience is a startup. And that's such an important thing to say. As you just said, I have this knowledge, this is my mission, this is my passion, this is how I'm going to achieve my goal. That in itself is an amazing About Us story. If you are a startup and you are looking to achieve an incredible mission like you are, Charles, it's about saying, this is what my purpose and my mission is. And over the next, for the rest of my time I'm in this business, I'm going to share what that is. And that's the other piece that I'd add to that conversation is your About Us can evolve. And it's about saying, okay, what is important right now in the business and how will that change? So for the first couple of years, you're a startup and this is what I'm trying to achieve. But as you start to kick those goals, as you start to get those clients and build that experience and start to get visible online, that story starts to evolve. And some of this earlier conversation can actually step aside and move forward to the new versions of you and the new conversations that you want to actually start through your About Us place. So this is the goal. And I want to reflect on the fact that, in the last year, I've managed to kick this or do that and achieve this. And so now we've reset and we're really excited about what's coming. And so it creates this excitement about the business as well. It's not just this static page that is like a history book. It should be something that's evolving, like your social media.
Absolutely. I definitely think put it in your calendar to revisit it every now and then. Unfortunately, I'm only revisiting mine about once a year, but ideally I'd probably be doing it every 6 months and giving it a little bit of extra love, for example, and putting it out there. But I think also remembering that people don't just Google what you do. Sometimes they'll have come across you and then they'll want to Google your name. So making sure that that's really clear in there, making sure that you've got different keywords in there that are relevant for what people will be searching for. Because remember, it's one of the most read pages on any website.
Yes.
And it also blows my mind how many people don't even have an about page at all, particularly if they're an e-commerce store, because they think, what's the relevance? But actually, if you've designed something incredible, or you're bringing together, for example, footwear, because, for adventurers, sharing your love of adventuring, sharing your experience.
So important.
It's important to do this is absolutely important. And of course, showing that point of difference.
I also think that my tip would be adding to all those amazing tips is to make sure when you write your about us on your web page that you do then copy that across, and again, not just copy it across, but take that essence and go, what information of this is going to be relevant on Pinterest, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Insta, all the different platforms, and how then do you reshare that information so there is consistency. If you've got a similar market, if you've got the same market across all the platforms, then making sure the message is fitting those market or fitting that audience. And we know, we've talked about the fact that the audience on LinkedIn may be a little different to something on Twitter or TikTok or Pinterest or wherever it is. So what do you need to tweak? What do you need to change? And how do you want to make sure that you continue to connect, but still have consistency in your story? You don't want to show up as 5 different people across the platforms, but you just need to make sure that the information is relevant to the platform that you put that information on.
I agree. So, for example, that about page I said for me includes the fact that my husband is a quadriplegic. It does not mention that on LinkedIn. It does not mention that on Facebook, because that is irrelevant to what I'm doing in those spaces. But at some point it might be relevant to talk about it in a post, for example, because, for example, this week is Carers Week. So, I've been preparing this post to go out today and I'm excited about that, for example. So yeah, there's totally different ways at different times that you'll be sharing snippets of that story. But Jenni, how about next week we talk about preparing your superhero statement or writing your superpower statement? Awesome. There's different ways we can talk about that, but I'd really like to do that one because that could be the beginning of your About Us page. Just that one little paragraph, put it in there. It's very punchy, and then it can flow from there. What do you think about that? I
think it's a great idea. We both love this conversation around superpower statements about how you show up and how you're able to share that in a really bite-sized byline, essentially. I think that would be a great idea. Let's do that next week.
Wonderful. I look forward to it. So
I'm so excited. This conversation of content is one of my favorite. I know you and I have lots of conversations about how content resonates and how you can get connected. And I just want to make sure everyone, the key point that Kylie mentioned just then is that your About Us page is one of the most read pages on your website or on your profile. So it's important to actually take the time, book some time. If you haven't got some time today, book some time in your diary on Monday or Sunday or next week to sit down and do your story and look through your story map so you can develop that. And then next week we can talk about how we can synthesize that into just a short superhero statement.
That sounds wonderful, Jenni. I really look forward to doing that with you.
And how can we find and get connected with you, Kylie, in between now and next Friday?
You can find me on hellomedia.team on the website, and also on Facebook and Instagram, and of course LinkedIn and Pinterest. I always forget to mention Pinterest, but that's one of my favorite platforms as well. What about you, Jenni? How can people connect with you?
So the best way to find me is at Elephant in the Room AU on Insta and Facebook. They're the 2 places I hang out. My website, eitrconsulting.com, or you can just Google Jenni Walke and I should come up with across all the platforms.
Wonderful, Jenni. Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining.
Have an amazing week. I love our Fridays. Have an awesome day, and I look forward to seeing you next Friday.
All right. Happy Friday, everyone. Bye. Thanks.